A submarine crew frozen in time, battle plans wrapped around 3 cigars, and a fortune that vanished into thin air. Today, we're counting down 5 disturbing Civil War mysteries that remain unsolved. Number 5. The Iron Coffin. In 2002, divers had finally hauled the turret of the USS Monitor from the ocean floor. When they cleared the silt, they found something chilling: the remains of 2 sailors, entombed for 140 years. The Monitor was the Union's secret weapon, the world's first modern ironclad warship. It was essentially a floating, revolving iron turret, but it had a fatal flaw. It was never meant for the open ocean. It was a 900-ton metal weight that could swamp in a heavy wave. When it sank during a storm in 1862, it took 16 men down with it. But when researchers cleared the silt and sea growth out of that recovered turret, they found something chilling: the remains of 2 sailors still trapped inside. For 140 years, these men were entombed in an iron cylinder at the bottom of the ocean. In their efforts to identify the men, experts started with the ship's official list of 16 crewmen. They then narrowed the list down by comparing the age, height, and physical condition of the skeletons. Finally, they moved on to DNA mapping, hoping to find living relatives of the missing men. Researchers tracked down the descendants of every man officially listed as missing, but the DNA didn't match. Despite a decade of DNA testing and forensic facial reconstruction, we still don't know who these men were. And then there was the condition of the skeletons. One was found with a direct blow to the skull that shouldn't have been possible inside the turret. The other was found with his legs entangled in the turret's gears. Were these men stowaways? Were they murdered before the ship went down? Or are they just 2 of the war's many nameless ghosts? In the first entry of our countdown, we saw how DNA couldn't identify the men who fought for the Union. Now, we see how even the most successful secret agent of the war managed to vanish from history without leaving so much as a real name behind. Number 4. The Faceless Spy in the Confederate White House. Inside the Confederate White House in Richmond, Virginia, President Jefferson Davis held his most private war councils. He discussed troop movements, supply shortages, and top-secret strategies. But someone else was always in the room, a servant who moved silently, ignored by the powerful men around them. We know a spy existed. We know information flowed from that room to the Union like a faucet someone forgot to shut. We know Elizabeth Van Lew, Richmond's most dangerous spy master, had an agent inside. But when historians went looking for that agent, they found a ghost. The name most history books give is Mary Bowser, but Mary Bowser, as history remembers her, may have never existed. The real woman, Mary Richards, used at least 3 different names during the war. She was born into slavery, educated in the North, and sent back into the lion's den by Van Lew herself. But here's where the record goes dark. There is no contemporary document placing Mary Richards inside the Confederate White House. The photographic memory, the secret diary, the dramatic escape, all of it traces back to a single newspaper article written 50 years after the war. None of it was ever verified. So someone stood in that room, someone listened, someone passed along secrets that cost Confederate lives. But if it wasn't Mary Richards, then who was it? And if it was her, how was she erased so completely that even history can't find her? Someone walked out of that house carrying secrets that could have ended the Confederacy, and then they vanished. Not captured, not killed, not even named. Just gone. While some spies managed to vanish into the shadows of history, our next group of men was found exactly where they were left, frozen in time in a tomb of iron. Number 3, the crew that never left. On a moonlit night in 1864, the Confederate submarine HL Hunley made history as the first sub to ever sink an enemy warship. But then, it vanished. When it was finally raised from the ocean floor in 2000, researchers prepared for a scene of chaos. Instead, they found something that defied logic. The 8-man crew was still sitting perfectly at their stations. No one had tried to reach the hatch. No one had fought to escape. It was as if time had simply stopped while they were still breathing. The Hunley was a desperate hand-cranked iron tube. After successfully ramming a torpedo into the USS Housatonic, the crew signaled back to shore that they were coming home. They never arrived. For 136 years, the mystery was, what killed them so fast that they didn't even have time to scream? Initial theories suggested they ran out of oxygen or were hit by a lucky shot. But when the silt was cleared, the skeletons showed no signs of trauma, and the hull was largely intact. In fact, the ship's commander, Lieutenant George Dixon, was found with a $20 gold piece in his pocket, bent by a bullet during the Battle of Shiloh. The most disturbing theory today? Blast lung. Modern ballistics experts believe the shock wave from their own torpedo traveled through the water and the iron hull, tearing through the crew's lungs before they ever knew what happened. This is the leading scientific theory, but since there is no soft tissue left to examine, the final fate of these men remains a mystery. While the Hunley crew took their secrets to the bottom of the sea, our next mystery involves a secret that was found lying in the grass, and it changed the course of the war forever. Number 2. Special Order 191. On September 13, 1862, a Union corporal resting in a meadow near Frederick, Maryland, looked down and saw a bulky envelope lying in the tall grass. Inside, wrapped around 3 expensive cigars, was a piece of paper that could have destroyed Lee's entire army. It was Special Order 191, General Robert E. Lee's entire top-secret battle plan. But as the Union scrambled to trap the Confederate Army, a disturbing question emerged. How did Lee find out his plans were gone before a single shot was fired? Think about what McClellan was holding, the exact position of every Confederate division, the precise route of Lee's supply lines, the timetable for the entire invasion. This wasn't a rumor or a guess. It was the battle plan, in Lee's own handwriting. The war should have been over within days. In fact, McClellan famously boasted, "If I cannot whip Bobby Lee with this paper, I will be willing to go home." But someone was watching. In the chaos of a Union camp celebrating what they thought was the end of the war, a figure slipped away. By some accounts, a Confederate sympathizer who had embedded himself among the Union soldiers. By others, a local civilian who understood exactly what those papers meant. Whoever it was, they rode through the night, through Union-controlled territory, past picket lines, through darkness, and reached Lee's command before dawn. How? We don't know. Who were they? We don't know that either. There's no name in any record, no arrest, no confession, no memoir. Just the fact that Lee knew. And because Lee knew, the bloodiest single day in American history happened at Antietam instead of a Confederate surrender. To this day, we don't know who dropped those cigars in the grass. And we don't know who picked up the warning and carried it through the night. 2 ghosts, one careless, one deliberate, and between them, they wrote the rest of the war. Special Order 191 was a secret found in a field that almost ended the war. But our final mystery is a secret that many believe is still buried in the fields of the South today, a fortune worth over $100 million. Number 1. The Vanishing Millions. In April 1865, as the Union Army closed in on Richmond, a heavy train steamed out of the city under the cover of darkness. On board wasn't just the retreating government, it was the entire wealth of a dying nation, millions in gold bullion, silver coins, and jewelry. But when the Union finally captured Confederate President Jefferson Davis a month later, the treasure had evaporated. No gold, no silver, and no records. For 160 years, anyone who dug too deep into the trail of the vanishing millions has been met with a wall of silence, or worse. The treasure train was guarded by a hand-picked group of midshipmen who traveled through the Carolinas and into Georgia. Small amounts were officially paid out to keep the retreating army fed, but the vast majority, a fortune that could be worth hundreds of millions today, simply disappeared near the town of Washington, Georgia. The mystery isn't just where the gold went, but who was left to guard it. Legend tells of the Knights of the Golden Circle, a shadowy secret society that reportedly buried the loot in dozens of small stashes across the South, intended to fund a second Civil War that never came. While the secret society theory is chilling, the reality might be more disturbing. Shortly after the war, several local families who had been impoverished for generations suddenly became the wealthiest landowners in the state, buying up massive plantations with gold coins they refused to explain. Whether it was stolen by bandits, hidden by a secret cult, or looted by the very men sworn to protect it, the Confederate treasury remains the greatest unsolved heist in American history. 5 mysteries, millions of dollars in lost gold, nameless heroes, and soldiers frozen at their posts. The Civil War ended over 160 years ago, but for these stories, there is still no closure. Whether the truth is buried in a Georgia forest or hidden in the DNA of a nameless sailor, these cases remain open. If you are drawn into these stories, stay with us. Which of these 5 mysteries feels closest to the truth? And which one should have stayed buried? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to explore more of history's unanswered questions, subscribe.